makes my heart break that we have to do this because of the reason. But by the same token, I love talking about.
Silence in Hollywood doesn't just happen. It's bought, traded, and protected like a secret currency. That hush you hear, it's not peace. It's the sound of reputations being shielded and billion-dollar legacies getting polished behind closed doors. But the silence surrounding Albert Brooks didn't feel like the usual PR move. This wasn't a team of lawyers scrambling to clean up a mess. No, this was the kind of quiet that comes from real heartbreak, the kind that sits heavy in your chest and won't let go. And what makes it hit even harder is the history behind it.
14 years old. So I'm still in that not believing it stage. I know what happened, but, I'm driving around and all of a sudden I actually 2 days ago, I called his number.
This wasn't some fake Hollywood friendship glued together with premieres and favors. Albert Brooks and Rob Reiner had been tight for over 60 years, long before fame, red carpets, or award shows ever entered the picture. Before All in the Family, before directing credits, before anyone even knew who they were just two kids cracking jokes, dreaming big, and chasing laughter like it was gold. They had no idea how much weight those dreams would one day carry. So when Albert finally opened up about what really went down inside that Brentwood home, everyone stopped and listened. What spilled out wasn't the clean, polished kind of story you get from press releases. It was raw emotion, frustration, guilt, and anger all tangled together and spilling into the open. It turned the whole story upside down. Most people just scroll past headlines with words like arrest or family crisis without even blinking. But this one demanded attention. Albert isn't just grieving his lifelong friend. He's exposing a breakdown that's been quietly ignored for years. He's saying out loud what the powerful only whisper when no one's listening. Up until now, the public version of this story has focused almost completely on Nick. But Albert's truth, it changes everything. Every story out there kept pushing the same picture, this idea of unconditional love. Article after article painted Rob and Michelle as picture-perfect parents who gave everything to help their struggling son. And to be fair, Albert never denied that the love was real. But his side of things, it cuts a whole lot deeper. It's raw, uncomfortable, and doesn't try to pretty up the truth. Albert speaks as someone who saw it all happen. He wasn't just an observer. He was in that house, sitting in that same living room 3 years ago, 5 years ago, even a whole decade back. He watched it slowly fall apart while everyone else kept quiet, too polite or too scared to speak up. He described it like watching a slow-motion crash you can't stop, knowing exactly how it's going to end, but still hoping it somehow won't. Now, Albert isn't out here trying to drag Rob for loving his son. He's not that kind of man. His point is something much sharper. He keeps saying that love without boundaries can turn dangerous fast. When love goes blind, when it looks away from the obvious red flags, it stops being protection and starts becoming permission. That's the word Albert won't let go of, enabling. Instead of running to late-night shows or doing a dramatic sit-down interview, Albert did something way more personal. He kept it quiet, sharing his truth only with a small group of old industry insiders, people who knew Rob before the fame, before the spotlight changed everything. And now, pieces of those private talks are starting to leak out, and what they reveal is chillingly honest. Albert didn't talk in vague riddles. He got specific, painfully specific. He described one night in particular, about 8 months before everything fell apart. It was supposed to be a calm dinner, just Rob, Michelle, Albert, and a few old friends. No tension, no drama, just laughter and memories. But then Nick walked in. And anyone who's lived through a family storm knows that feeling, the shift in the air when peace turns to pressure in an instant. The second Nick walked in, the whole vibe changed. Instantly. Conversations died mid-sentence, and people started exchanging looks that said everything without saying a single word. But according to Albert, Rob's reaction wasn't fear or frustration, it was hope. Heartbreaking, fragile hope. The kind that whispers, Maybe this time it'll be different. Albert stopped for a moment while recalling it, and everyone listening could feel the weight of it, because hope can lift you up. But when reality keeps breaking it, that same hope can destroy you. Albert and Rob go all the way back to high school. They were brothers in spirit long before fame ever came knocking. Albert never said Nick was beyond saving, and he never accused Rob of failing as a dad. What he did say, though, hit like a truth bomb, pretending the storm isn't there doesn't make it vanish. That's where his words cut deep, because this isn't just about one family or one house in Brentwood. It's about a whole system that values image over honesty, that rewards silence while punishing truth-tellers. Albert didn't sound bitter when he spoke. He sounded tired. The kind of tired that comes from years of watching the same mistakes on repeat. You could hear the regret in his voice, like someone wishing they'd shouted the warning sooner. And once you hear his version of what went down, you can't unhear it. Rob jumped to his feet the moment Nick stepped through that door, arms wide open, trying to pull his son in like everything was fine.
Here for the longest time, I don't get to see enough, but it's always a pleasure when you're here. Thank you for bringing him, for doing this.
What am I, a dog?
He's my service animal.
Okay.
Fun to look out the window.
And I always knew you guys were friends until I saw this documentary. I know you went back. I didn't know what you go way, way back.
Yes.
Like
The high school, yes.
high school, is that
we
how
met
you-
in high school, yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and we became instant friends. We met, it was a class. I think we were like 16, 17 at the time. 16.
It remains one of the most embarrassing moments of my life.
But Nick wasn't there for hugs or small talk. He came with a demand, and not some small favor either. We're talking about serious cash, the kind people throw at problems they've been too scared to face for years. Albert said the mood flipped in seconds. The laughter vanished, the food went cold, and every eye in that room froze on what was unfolding. Then Albert looked at Michelle, and what he saw wasn't anger or annoyance. It was something else entirely, something that made the air feel heavy. What Albert saw in Michelle's eyes that night wasn't confusion, it was fear, raw and real. And that detail hits hard because that fear didn't just appear out of nowhere. It had been living inside that house for years, quiet, unspoken, and ignored. After that moment, Albert said something inside him snapped. He couldn't sit there and pretend anymore. He pulled Rob aside, away from the table, out onto the patio where no one else could hear a word. No soft talk, no polite dodging, just the truth, straight up. He asked his oldest friend the question that had been burning in his chest for years. How long are you going to let him hold you hostage? That line cut through the air like glass. And what haunts Albert most isn't what he said, it's what Rob said back. Rob didn't get angry. He didn't defend Nick. He didn't even argue. He just looked drained, like a man who's been carrying the same mountain on his back for too long. Then he whispered something Albert can still hear crystal clear. If I stop, I lose him. In Rob's mind, letting go meant losing his son forever. He really believed that his money, his constant attention, and his endless rescuing were the only things keeping the whole situation from collapsing completely. But what Rob couldn't see was that by protecting Nick from the fallout, he was actually pulling the danger closer and closer to his doorstep. That's where Albert makes people squirm. He doesn't let anyone hide behind excuses. He refuses to let mental health become a blanket explanation for everything that went wrong. Not something to ignore, not something to dismiss, but definitely not a free pass either. We live in a world that turns every tragedy into a tour of explanations. Trauma, pressure, addiction, upbringing, and sure, Nick had his struggles. Everyone knew that. The substance problems weren't some hidden secret. But Albert breaks through all that noise with brutal honesty. He says he grew up surrounded by addiction. He saw people lose themselves, saw kids fall apart, and still, most of them never crossed this line. That's why he pushes back so hard on the idea that Nick was just another victim of his own mind. Albert believes there was something darker at play, something personal, something that went way beyond the usual excuses. Albert believes what fueled Nick wasn't just frustration, it was resentment, deep and bitter. Not the kind that fades after an argument, but the kind that grows over years, aimed right at the people who loved him most. And there's another layer the mainstream stories keep skipping: jealousy. Imagine growing up in the shadow of Rob Reiner, a man whose name is tied to movie history, The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, Stand By Me. How do you breathe under a last name that heavy? There's no room to just exist. Albert remembers a moment from years ago back on set when someone casually mentioned Rob in conversation and Nick snapped. Not teasing, not irritated. He was furious. Albert said that wasn't rebellion. That was bitterness, pure and festering. The kind that eats away at you and you feel invisible standing next to someone the world calls a legend. From how Albert sees it, Nick wasn't only after cash. He wanted to destroy the image, to break down the perfect legacy and crush the pedestal his father stood on. None of this, Albert insists, spiraled by accident. He's convinced it was deliberate, a plan to shatter the symbol that had haunted Nick his entire life. Now Albert's anger has shifted. He's furious about what he knows is coming next. The legal playbook is already being written, and he can practically see the strategy forming before it even hits the courtroom. The defense attorney, Alan Jackson, smart, seasoned, and dangerously strategic. Albert knows exactly how the story's about to be spun. They'll paint Nick as a troubled man, crushed by fame, misunderstood, failed by the system, and broken by impossible expectations. And Albert's terrified that people might actually buy it. He's been shouting the warning to anyone who'll listen. Don't let them twist the truth, because the next move is as predictable as it is cruel. Shift the blame. Turn Rob into the problem. Claim he was too strict or not strict enough. Say the family name was a curse, that the pressure broke them. And Albert says that cruel rewrite of reality is the part that hurts the most. The people who are gone can't defend themselves. They can't explain, can't clarify, can't fight back. And that's exactly why Albert is speaking now. He's not doing this for attention or headlines. He's stepping up because Rob doesn't have a voice anymore. Albert knows that if he stays quiet, the story will get rewritten by people who were never there. And he refuses to let that happen. Albert isn't just a witness to the love that filled that house. He's also a witness to the pain that came with it. The quiet kind of damage Rob carried for years without saying a word. And that's what's making everyone so uneasy now. Because according to Albert, it wasn't just tension or confusion. It went beyond that. There were moments that cut deep, moments that crossed into emotional harm. And Rob, he took it all without fighting back. There's one story Albert shared that froze an entire room. It's centered on Michelle Reiner, the heart of that home. Michelle was the calm in the chaos, the creative soul, the artist behind the lens who always tried to keep everyone grounded. But when Albert spoke her name, his voice cracked. He said that just weeks before everything fell apart, Michelle called him. Out of the blue. No small talk, no explanations. She didn't mention Nick's name, but her questions said it all. She asked about security systems. She asked about safe rooms. Let that sink in. This wasn't some family living in a dangerous neighborhood. This was Brentwood, one of the safest, most locked down areas around. So why was Michelle asking those questions? Because she wasn't scared of strangers. She was scared of someone who already had the keys, someone who knew the codes, someone who could walk right through the door without knocking. Albert told her straight up, change everything. Change the codes, upgrade the security, get real protection, and put some serious distance between fear and danger. But the part that keeps Albert up at night, the part that eats at him, is not knowing if she ever followed through. Did she actually make those changes? Or did fear stay too close for too long? He'll never stop wondering. And that question haunts him every single day. That phone call still haunts Albert. He can't shake it. He replays it over and over in his head, wondering if he should have gotten in the car that night, if maybe showing up could have changed something. Anything. The guilt sits heavy on him, and you can see it every time he speaks. Because what they had wasn't just friendship. It was a bond built over a lifetime. Albert Brooks and Rob Reiner weren't just close. They were mirror images of each other.
He gave me a leg up when I started making movies, connected me to Jerry O'Connell and Kevin Pollak.
And to speak to these two people, Jerry O'Connell, who was maybe 11 years old when he met Rob Reiner for the first time, talks of a warm, kind person without whom he probably couldn't have finished that movie. And Kevin Pollak, a comedy and of course, movie legend, talks about nothing but greatness when he worked with him on the set of A Few Good Men. Rob Reiner was a step-up guy for the industry. His dad was a legend, Carl Reiner.
Same quick wit, same instincts, same timing, even the same kind of humor that could light up a room. They built their careers side by side, step by step, for decades. So when Rob was gone, it didn't just take away a friend, it ripped away half of Albert's world. That grief didn't fade, it hardened into purpose, into anger with direction. Albert's done staying quiet while Hollywood polishes its own image. He's ripping the cover off that shiny shield powerful families use to protect themselves. Usually, when a celebrity's kid starts spiraling, the machine turns on. PR statements, privacy please, notes to the press, silent cleanups behind the scenes. But Albert's calling it out for what it really is, silence that kills. He says that silence is exactly what allowed everything to spin out of control. Albert swears that if someone, anyone, had stepped in years earlier, things might have gone a whole different way. He even talks about one shocking moment when Nick allegedly hurled a chair straight through a window. That was the point where real help, serious intervention, should have stepped in. But no one made the call. And why? Because no one calls the cops on Rob Reiner's son. Instead, you call a private doctor. You call a fixer. You call someone who specializes in making ugly moments vanish before they hit the headlines. That's the part Albert's not afraid to say out loud anymore. In his eyes, privilege didn't save that family. It trapped them. By dodging consequences for so long, they erased every chance for things to stop before it was too late. There was always a cushion, always a check, always a quiet cleanup, until one day there wasn't. Albert says the system failed because it kept bending instead of standing strong. And the price for all that understanding was devastating. He's not sugarcoating a thing. It's a harsh accusation, and he refuses to back down from it. People who've seen recent clips of Albert talking about it say he looks completely changed. Older, heavier, like the weight of the truth has been sitting on his shoulders for years. The sharp humor he was once known for? Gone. What's left is a man still stunned by what happened, still trying to make sense of it all. He even described how he found out, and it's heartbreaking. The news didn't come from family or a call filled with condolences. He got it from a mutual business contact who had picked it up through emergency radio chatter. Imagine that. Finding out your best friend's gone through background noise on a radio before anyone close to the situation even reaches out to you. Albert said he didn't think. He just got in his car and drove straight to Brentwood. When he got there, the whole place was chaos. Flashing lights, police barriers, crowds of press, and that sickening stillness that hangs in the air when everything's gone wrong. Albert tried to push through, shouting that he was family, desperate to get closer. But it didn't matter. The officers held him back. They didn't recognize him, or maybe they just didn't care. To them, he was just another older man behind the tape, yelling through grief. That image won't leave him, standing there behind police tape, watching as the people he loved most were reduced to files and procedures. No history, no heart, no humanity, just paperwork being shuffled under cold lights. That's the memory that fuels him now. With the trial now locked for January, Albert's made his position loud and clear. He's showing up front row, right behind the prosecution. He wants Nick to see him sitting there. He wants him to feel that stare, to look into the eyes of the man who remembers everything, every promise, every excuse, every check that was written to cover up the storm. Albert isn't guessing. He's the living record of what really happened, the version that never made the headlines. That's what makes him such a threat to the defense. He doesn't need theories or speculation. He's got memories burned into him, and now he's done being quiet. Meanwhile, the Reiner brothers, Jake and Roy, are asking the public for peace, but for Albert, peace doesn't come easy anymore. The Reiner siblings want privacy, and Albert gets that. He truly does. But in his mind, silence has already cost too much. He's not willing to let it win again. Jake and Roy have asked for forgiveness, and Albert respects that choice. It's theirs to make. They're grieving in the only way kids can when they've lost everything. Their parents and their brother all at once. And somehow, they're still trying to protect Rob and Michelle's memory without completely cutting Nick out of the picture. That's an impossible balance to hold, and they're walking that tightrope with quiet grace. But Albert, he's not on that same road. He's set it straight. He's not family by blood, so he doesn't carry the same duty to forgive just because it looks noble. He was Rob's best friend, not his relative. And friends don't look for comfort when everything burns down. They look for accountability. Albert keeps repeating one thing. Grief doesn't have to mean silence, and forgiveness doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. While the siblings are choosing peace, Albert is choosing truth. And that choice has rubbed a lot of powerful people the wrong way. He's furious at how the industry reacted, the performative sympathy, the perfectly worded captions, the emotional hashtags, the flood of heartbroken posts from people who, according to Albert, hadn't even picked up the phone for Rob in years. He says it's all a show. Performative grief, he calls it. Public sadness with zero private responsibility. People who once ignored Rob's calls now posting about how much they'll miss his laughter. Albert says it's hypocrisy wrapped in compassion. Some of those same folks knew exactly how bad things were with Nick. They'd whisper about it at parties, warn others behind closed doors, then still turn around and invite him out, smiling for photos just because of that last name. Albert doesn't publicly drop names, but everyone in those inner circles knows exactly who he means. He's done with the fake mourning and carefully worded tributes. He's not chasing likes or sympathy. He's chasing the truth. He wants answers, not condolences. He wants to know who supplied Nick that night. And the way Albert talks about it, you can tell. This isn't just curiosity. It's obsession mixed with justice. Because for him, this isn't about revenge. It's about finally breaking the cycle of silence that's been protecting the wrong people for far too long. Albert isn't just asking who supplied Nick that night. He wants to know everything. Who drove him there? Who opened the door? Who kept quiet when they knew better? He wants every hidden hand, every silent helper, every enabler dragged into the light. Because to him, this isn't some Hollywood scandal. It's a brutal, real-world lesson about what happens when money, fame, fear, and denial all collide. It forces one hard question no one wants to ask. Where does love end and responsibility begin? Rob Reiner spent his entire career telling stories where love always wins. Movies that taught people to believe love conquers anything, that it heals, forgives, and survives every obstacle. But now, standing in the aftermath, Albert's saying something that cuts right through that fantasy. Love didn't stop this. Love made it possible. He says love gave access. Love kept the doors open that should have been locked tight. That's the gut punch, the complete reversal of everything Rob's films ever stood for. It's what makes this whole tragedy sting so deeply, not just for Albert, but for everyone who ever believed in those stories. Albert shared a moment from the memorial planning that left everyone in tears. He was sitting with Jake and Roy, going through stacks of old photos, Rob laughing on set, Michelle smiling behind the camera, those small, beautiful moments that freeze time. Then, buried deep in one of the boxes, they found a picture from about 15 years ago. The whole family together. Nick standing there, smiling, calm, looking just like any other proud son. Albert said his first reaction was rage. He wanted that photo gone. To him, it felt like a lie captured on glossy paper, a version of the past that erased all the pain that came after. But Jake and Roy stopped him. To them, that image wasn't a reminder of betrayal. It was still their brother, a piece of the good that once existed before everything fell apart. And that moment right there says everything. That's where the real heartbreak lives, the clash between memory and truth. The family needing to hold on to the light while the friend can't look at it without seeing the shadows it eventually cast. That's the divide Albert can't cross. The line between remembering love and recognizing what it cost. Neither side is wrong. They're just carrying different kinds of pain. The Reiner family is trying to protect what's left, and Albert's trying to make sure the truth doesn't disappear. But the toll it's taken on him, it's brutal. Albert's in his late 70s now, and this kind of stress doesn't just fade away with time. The sleepless nights, the endless mental replays, the anger that won't calm down, it's all carved into him. He's even said that time feels strange now, not because he's scared, but because grief rewires everything, body and mind. Rob wasn't just Albert's best friend. He was part of who he was. The two of them built entire eras of their lives side by side. Albert once shared a memory from an old set. Chaos everywhere, jokes flying, laughter echoing nonstop. He said Rob was the only person who could make him laugh so hard he couldn't breathe. But now that laughter, it's gone. Replaced by an emptiness that doesn't let up. The silence left behind is crushing. Albert says he's tried revisiting their old work, tried watching those films they used to celebrate together, but he can't make it through. The second the screen lights up, something in him shuts down. Every smile, every familiar line pulls up memories he can't push away. He says the quiet that follows is louder than anything he's ever heard in his life, and that's why Albert keeps talking. Not for attention, not for revenge, but because silence already stole too much from him. He refuses to let it take anything else. But there's another layer to his pain, something darker that most people don't even want to admit. Albert believes Nick didn't just take Rob from the world. He took Rob's legacy, too. Think about it. How can anyone sit down and watch When Harry Met Sally now without that shadow sneaking into the back of their mind? The magic's still there, but it's changed. It's heavier. The laughter still hits, but it carries a sadness it never had before. The joy feels stained, like it's fighting to exist under the weight of what came after. But the most haunting thing Albert ever shared, worse than the guilt, worse than the silence, had nothing to do with money, fame, or Hollywood at all. It was something deeper, something that revealed how grief can twist even the strongest soul. It all comes back to Nick's eyes. Albert says that in those final months, something inside them was just gone. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't rage, not even the fog of addiction. It was pure emptiness. He described it like walking past a building after everyone's moved out. Lights still on, walls still standing, but nothing left inside. And the part that twists the knife, Albert swears Rob saw it, too. They were both staring at the same hollow stare, but they read it completely differently. Albert saw danger, a warning sign, a moment to step back, to protect yourself, to draw a line. But Rob saw pain, the kind he believed could be fixed with more love, more patience, more time. That was the split right there, the breaking point. One man shouting to back away, the other running toward the fire, holding hope like a bucket of water. And the one carrying hope got burned. Now, with the January trial inching closer, Albert's making one thing loud and clear. He's done staying silent. No more playing the funny guy. No more hiding behind humor or nostalgia. He's stepping into a new role now, and he doesn't care who's uncomfortable about it. Albert's no fool. He knows how this world works. He's watched enough headlines, enough courtroom dramas to see how stories get rewritten once the lawyers step in. He knows exactly how juries can be swayed, how tragic backstories, childhood struggles, and emotional spin can twist accountability until it almost disappears. And he knows that the kind of legal team behind Nick's defense will do everything to blur the lines. Just enough to make guilt look complicated. That's why Albert's speaking now, because he's not about to let another rewrite bury the truth. He's drawing a hard line and refusing to let sympathy become a smokescreen. His message is simple but sharp. Rob and Michelle weren't villains. They weren't cold, careless people. They were parents who loved with everything they had. And that's exactly what made them vulnerable. It's not easy to hear. But Albert's forcing people to face it, the idea that love itself can become dangerous when it refuses to see the truth. It's uncomfortable, it's painful, but he says it anyway, because protecting grief with silence is what got them here in the first place. Albert says silence already failed them once, and he's not letting it fail again. To him, the truth is the last real form of respect, not comforting phrases, not polished tributes, not pretending things were calm when they clearly weren't. He's done with soft rewrites and careful wording. He wants the world to know what actually happened. There's one detail he keeps circling back to, one that won't leave his mind. Rob was afraid that night.
Okay, dead from the neck up. Meat head. What did you call me?
I could win the Nobel Prize and would say, Meathead wins Nobel. We went to a royal premiere of When Harry Met Sally in London, and we were walking up this red carpet to meet Princess Diana, and I got meatheaded a couple of times.
That's the part Albert refuses to let anyone erase. He doesn't want some gentle version of the story floating around, one that says Rob slipped away quietly, at peace. He wants it known that there was fear, confusion, and panic, because that fear matters. It matters in court. It matters for the truth. It matters for the kind of justice that doesn't bend under sympathy. Albert believes consequences have to reflect reality, not the softened version designed to make people feel comfortable. This isn't about revenge. It's grief that's evolved into purpose. It's about demanding that pain be seen and truth never be watered down. So when the updates start flooding social media, when people start sharing headlines about the Reiner case, Albert wants everyone to stop scrolling for a second. He wants them to look past the legal jargon, the court delays, the technical excuses, and actually picture it. Albert sitting alone in his house, surrounded by 60 years of memories. The framed photos, the faded scripts, the echoes of laughter from conversations that will never happen again. All those milestones, all those years, they're the reason he refuses to stay quiet. Every joke, every shared moment, every dream that turned into a memory, it's all sitting in that room with him, heavy and unshakable. And while the world debates the case and lawyers argue over evidence, Albert is waiting for one call, and only one. Not another delay, not another procedural update, not another polished statement from someone close to the family. He's waiting for the call that says accountability has finally landed, the call that says the truth, his friend's truth, was finally heard. And Albert knows, even when that long-awaited call finally comes, it won't bring peace. It won't fill those empty rooms or silence the echo that's been chasing him for years. This isn't a movie. And there's no Hollywood twist hiding in the final act, no sudden redemption, no cinematic music swelling to make it all feel okay. Real life doesn't end with closure. It just fades, slowly, painfully, and without applause. Yet Albert is still there, refusing to look away. He keeps saying the same thing over and over. The signs were always there. The warnings were real, but nobody wanted to face them because pretending everything was fine was just easier. And that's what cuts the deepest. The danger wasn't invisible, it was just ignored. The question now isn't if this story ends. It will. Everything does. The real question is whether anyone will actually learn from it, because the media will do what it always does. They'll air polished tributes, replay smiling clips, roll the moving on montages. They'll talk about healing and closure like it's a script they've read 100 times before. But Albert's standing in the middle of it all, reminding everyone that the wound is still open, still raw, still bleeding beneath all that glossy coverage. And the hardest truth he keeps repeating, the one that leaves a chill in every room, is this. The people closest to us aren't always the safest. Sometimes the real warning comes from the one person off to the side, the friend shouting into the chaos, watching everything fall apart and realizing too late that no one's listening. So now the question isn't just Albert's, it's ours too. Are we finally listening? If this story hit you, if it made you stop and think, don't let it fade into another forgotten headline. Subscribe, share, and drop a comment with your thoughts.